Hello everyone, this is Pooka and welcome to another Pokemon TCG video. We're still trying to figure out what decks are good with the new set XY Phantom Forces. You know, some new cards come out that bring some brand new decks along, and then there's the question of are old decks still viable in today's metagame? Do the decks we had before still have a chance, or are they made better? And that's what we're trying to look at right now. Today we're going to look at a very simple deck revolving around Seismitoad EX that I think has a lot of potential to be very good still. So let's take a look at Seismitoad EX. It's not a very complicated Pokemon, but sometimes you'll learn simplicity can lead to great things in the Pokemon TCG. Just doing one simple thing over and over and over can lead to many, many victories. So Seismitoad EX is going to be used mainly for its attack, Quaking Punch. Does 30 damage for 2 colorless energy, and then your opponent can't play any item cards on his or her next turn. Now that's huge. Item cards, I mean, they make up a big chunk of pretty much every deck. I would say at least 15 to 20 items are played in every deck, if not more. And just thinking about that, if your opponent plays 20 item cards, when you use Quaking Punch, they don't get to use a third of their deck. That is just downright ridiculous. So that attack is extremely powerful. But it only does 30 damage, so that's where the problem comes in. Alright, only 30 damage. So how are we going to knock things out? Well, this is going to be kind of a slow-moving deck pretty frequently. It's going to struggle to knock Pokemon out sometimes. But we do have some things to speed up the process a little bit. First card is going to be Muscle Band. This one should be pretty obvious. You add 20 damage. So now Quaking Punch is doing 50 instead of the normal 30. Pretty good. And of course, on top of that, we're going to be running Hypnotoxic Laser. So this will poison your opponent's active Pokemon. If you flip heads, also puts them to sleep. The sleep flips can be huge in this deck, since your opponent can't play any item cards, which means no cards like Switch or Escape Rope to get out of that special condition, and that can win you a game sometimes. So 4 Laser, and we're also going to run 3 Burbank City Gym just to make sure we get that additional 2 damage counters, because the way things work out, a Burbank City Gym in play, Quaking Punch, I mean, it just adds up to a knockout on Pokemon EX in 2 turns if they remain poisoned. So Burbank and Laser are huge in this deck, as is Muscle Band. Just things to keep in mind. Without these, Quaking Punch would not be nearly as good, but with them, it becomes a pretty annoying and devastating attack. So Quaking Punch is going to be the attack you're using like 90% of the time with this deck. You're going to just use Quaking Punch over and over and over. It's kind of boring, but it's very effective. Now, it also has Grenade Hammer. This is not an attack we see used too often, but we will be running Water Energy to use it. It does 130 damage for 3 energy, and then 30 to 2 of your benched Pokemon. So it's not an attack we want to use very frequently, but when we do, it's probably going to be to win the game. 130 damage, not quite enough to knock things out in one hit, but with a Muscle Band, we're doing 150, and with Laser and Burbank, we're doing 180 damage. And, well, that is enough to knock out a lot of Pokemon EX. So Grenade Hammer, need to keep in mind that it is there. We are running 5 Water Energy just in case we need to use that, and then 4 Double Colorless will be the main way to power up Seismitoad EX. Now, if we're taking away items, another powerful thing to take away is abilities. So we're going to be running Garbodor as well. Garbotoxin, of course, if you have a Pokemon tool on Garbodor, shuts off abilities. This is your way to beat things like Pyroar, and also shuts off things like Team Plasma decks, and all sorts of other things that rely on abilities. So Garbotoxin, pretty important for this deck. So we have a 2-2 Garbodor line in here as well. And Seismitoad EX, boy, he is really bad against Virizion EX and Genesect EX. Not only is he weak to grass, which means Genesect will blow it up in one hit, but Virizion EX resists water, so Quaking Punch starts off doing 10 damage. That's not good. So we do need to run some kind of fire Pokemon to deal with those Virizion Genesect decks. The one we're going to try out in this deck is actually going to be Charizard EX. Now, we aren't running any Fire Energy. Combustion Blast looks big on paper, but we need to run Fire Energy and then Blacksmith to power it up, and it's not worth it. We're actually going for the Wing Attack. And that might seem really strange, but if you think about the math, if you put a Muscle Band on Charizard that's doing 80 damage with Wing Attack, and that's doing 160 to a Virizion EX or a Genesect EX. And then with a Hypnotoxic Laser and a Verbank City Gym, which you can use because of Garbodor, you're actually knocking out Virizion and Genesect. You don't even need the Verbank City Gym. Now that I think about it, you just need a regular laser, no Verbank, and Wing Attack plus Muscle Band gets a knockout on those guys. So that's really, really big. Being able to knock those out in one hit. If you buy enough time with an early Quaking Punch or two and power up some Charizards, you can take down some Genesects. You'd be surprised. And then our last Pokemon will be Jirachi EX. I love this little guy. It's especially good in this deck. Just being able to search out specific supporter cards. Stellar Guidance, just a great ability. And I think it's a card I just love to play whenever I get the chance. 90 HP, Pokemon EX makes it a liability on the bench, but man, that ability is super, super good. Now this deck is all about disruption. Right, we saw Quaking Punch and Garbotoxin, so let's try to disrupt our opponent as much as possible. First card is going to be Headringer. It's kind of hard to read with the flare symbol back there, but you can put this on your opponent's Pokemon EX, and then they have to pay one more to attack. Now this can be really big against, like I was just saying before, Virizion Genesect decks. Think of how often Virizion EX tries to turn to Emerald Slash. If you could put a Headringer on there before they put down a Muscle Band, then wow, you could just stop them from using Emerald Slash turn 2 and slow down their deck by an entire turn just with this one item card. So this is just a very strong card, especially with Seismitoad EX, which will limit some options already. So we got a couple Headringer. We also have Enhanced Hammer, one of the most annoying cards ever in the Pokemon TCG. Discard a special energy attached to one of your opponent's Pokemon. This can slow them down big time. And again, just goes along with the disruption theme. And if these weren't enough, we're also going to run a Team Flare Grunt. Discard energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. It's your supporter, but it's a guaranteed energy removal on the active, and it could be very, very good at times. So those are the main cards we're going to be using for Disruption. And of course, we also have Lysander as Disruption if you bring out a Pokemon with a high retreat cost. Pretty often they won't have a way to retreat it because they can't play Switch, Floatstone, or Escape Rope. And you can just stick something active and get a free knockout with Lysander. Now, Phantom Forces brought VS Seeker into the mix as well. Seismitoad is a deck that's going to take great advantage of this, not only with the Lysander, but with the Team Flare Grunt. Oof, you can get those over and over. And it's just a very versatile card. Allows you to get pretty much any of these cards. Alright, our other supporters, 4 Professor, Juniper, 4 N, pretty standard, you'll see that in everything. And then 2 Skyla and 2 Colress. You could make an argument for Shauna in this deck, or maybe some Bicycle instead. I'm just going to go with the standard Colress for right now. 4 Ultra Ball just to search out the Pokemon, and then 1 Escape Rope just in case we need a switching card in addition to our 2 Floatstone. And then our Ace-Spec card will be Computer Search. You can actually run a whole bunch of different Ace-Spec cards in this deck. I could see running Computer Search, Dowsing Machine, Life Dew, Rock Guard. I could see Scoop Up Cyclone. I mean, this is a very, very versatile deck in terms of your Ace-Spec card. I wouldn't be upset if you ran any of those. I'm just going to go for the simple, straightforward Computer Search, though. Since this deck is going to be all about consistency, pulling off our strategy, executing it as often as possible. So you can see here high counts of pretty much everything we want. 4 Seismitoad, 4 Ultra Ball, 4 Laser, we're even on a 3 Verbank, 4 Muscle Band. We just want to make sure we get our stuff out and get it out consistently. So here you have it, a very simple but very effective Seismitoad EX deck. And let's take a look at it in action on Pokemon TCG Online, see if we can get something going here. Get a nice game. So looks like I will be going first, going to mulligan and show my opponent what I'm playing. And unfortunately, we are starting off with the Charizard, but that's okay. We can still pull off something. Unfortunately, my hand is not very good. Wishing that Colress was a Shauna right now. I have a water energy. I could attach it to the active Charizard and threaten a turn to wing attack. But we don't want to really wing attack. We want the Quaking Punch. So I think the water energy is better served on that Seismitoad. I could play the Verbank and Laser right there, but I would rather not waste it on a little Trubbish. So I'm just going to go ahead and pass this turn. We see a Verbank City Gym from the opponent, and then an Ultra Ball, discarding Keldeo and an N. So we might see a Professor Juniper or something like that, and we'll get to see what kind of deck this is pretty soon. There's a Seismitoad EX from my opponent, along with a Muscle Band. An N, alright. So that's going to bail me out a little bit here. We do get a fresh hand of 6 cards, and this one is much better looking. And then we see an Yveltal EX, so clearly an Yveltal Garbodor deck. And of course, those decks do play Seismitoad EX in them as well. Alright, so I guess we can start using Quaking Punch here. I have the Jirachi. I could do the guaranteed thing here. And I think that's a smart thing to do. Just go ahead and Stellar Guidance. Grab a Skyla and get to work. We can grab a Float Stone, or, if I had a Muscle Band, I would probably take Escape Rope and force out one of those Pokemon EX. But this Quaking Punch is going to be more of a defensive move, since I don't have a whole lot of options in my hand right now. We're just going to make sure the game kind of slows down a little bit before we set up. Like I said, we could grab Escape Rope or Float Stone. I'm going to go Float Stone. Put that on Charizard, retreat into Seismitoad, and then take away my opponent's item cards. And if you see in this situation, this is an extremely safe Quaking Punch. 30 damage, no items. Really the only way my opponent would be able to attack me with anything besides Trubbish this turn is like the Cassius or an AZ, whatever his name is. Those are the only ways my opponent would be able to pull off an attack this turn. And there you go. Just an energy attachment to Trubbish. Opponent was probably looking for Darkrai to retreat. Otherwise, it's kind of a wasted attachment, I suppose. And I do have a Head Ringer off of this N. We're definitely going to put that on Yveltal EX. Force my opponent to have more energy to use Evil Ball. And also take away the option to Muscle Band if I ever have to break the Quaking Punch lock. And I have an option to not attack Trubbish here. Or not knock out Trubbish here. I'm going to go ahead and just take the knockout and put some pressure on. Because if my opponent doesn't have an energy here, it's a really big deal. I'll get a hit in on an EX. I don't know. I could be patient there and give my opponent more time to set up things on the bench. But I'm just going to be proactive here. I'm going to take the first hit on this Quaking Punch, but that's okay. I'm fine with that. Now, I did not get an energy, which is a pretty big bummer, but that's fine. We'll bench a Trubbish, since benching a non-EX doesn't really matter here. And then go for Quaking Punch. Just do 50 damage and soften up the Seismitoad. This is going to be a pretty boring Seismitoad battle. Now, it's interesting here. I could go for the Grenade Hammer here. That is an option. If I find another energy, I could Grenade Hammer and get the knockout, but that would leave me in an awkward position where I leave myself vulnerable to an N to 3, and I might miss double colorless. I give my opponent access to item cards again, and you really just want to Quaking Punch whenever you can, and I think that's going to be my goal here. I have a Team Flare Grunt. We can definitely use that to discard the double colorless off of Seismitoad EX, force my opponent to continue to attach to the active, and make it a little more difficult for that Yveltal EX on the bench to get all powered up. So this is kind of an awkward exchange, but, I don't mind being on the losing end of this as long as we constantly take away item cards from my opponent. And the way the math is going to work out, 3 Quaking Punches will lead to that Seismitoad EX having 30 HP left, which means I get to Quaking Punch without a Muscle Band, and get a knockout. Now the head ringer is pretty cool back there. That means I don't think I'll be able to get knocked out by an Yveltal EX on the following turn. Won't see a muscle band or anything. And my opponent actually misses an energy attachment. That's pretty big. I'm missing the big energy attachment there. We also see Manectric EX, so lots of stuff in my opponent's deck. We've seen Garbodor, Seismitoad, Yveltal, Manectric. I just gotta wonder how that all fits into a single deck here. But here we're going to have the game-changing play. We're going to end my opponent down to 3 cards. Actually 4 cards, sorry. And then go ahead and Quaking Punch for the knockout. And leaving my opponent with only a Darkness Energy in play. Now, if there's no double colorless energy this turn, there will not be an attack from that Yveltal EX because of Headringer. Unfortunately, we do see the double colorless energy. It's alright, though. We can deal with it. We can afford to give up one more Seismitoad EX. This is actually still a decent spot for me, as you'll probably find out. There will be an opportunity for my opponent to potentially win soon, but I really like my spot here. I'm going to go ahead and Ultra Ball for another Trubbish, which we'll end up just discarding right here. And alright, it was going to be a good spot as long as I got a Hypnotoxic Laser. And of course I did. Got another Muscle Band we can play down, and we'll go for the Quaking Punch for 50 damage. And this is going to set up that sweet knockout next turn with another Quaking Punch. My opponent pretty much has to attack with this Yveltal EX. If he doesn't, he's not getting a knockout. And you don't want to let a Seismitoad get away, right? It's so close to being knocked out. And you'd be kind of wasting energy. I could see maybe an Oblivion Wing from that Yveltal, but I don't think that's probably worth it here. My opponent feels the same way, and that means, Yveltal EX is going to get the knockout on my Seismitoad. My opponent will get down to 2 prizes, but, it's looking good. I gotta say, it is looking good. I will be able to Quaking Punch for the knockout here. Opponent still doesn't have access to item cards, so it's going to be really tough for my opponent to win next turn, but a double colorless and a Lysander could take down Jirachi, and then I could lose the game that way. So that would be super duper annoying to lose that way. I could have computer searched for N there, but I would rather just, play the odds. The odds of my opponent having Lysander double colorless probably not great. We've seen a few double colorless gone already. Not sure how many Lysander are gone, but with only 5 cards, I'll take the risk. Basically saying, if you don't win next turn, I will win. Because a Hypnotoxic Laser on an EX, that's going to be game over. So let's go with the Quaking Punch for 50 damage. Getting the knockout on that Yveltal EX. And this has kind of been a weird game, but you can see, just grind away with the Quaking Punch. Grind away. One by one, your opponent's Pokemon go down, and you're going to lose some prizes along the way. They're going to build up some attackers, but the eventual goal is going to be they just run out of resources. They run out of the ability to knock out your big Seismitoads, and eventually you should be able to finish off the game. Now look what's going to happen here. I attached the DC to Seismitoad just to prepare for Grenade Hammer, did some math, and figured out my opponent could only do 160 damage since there's no item cards that can be played. And now I could computer search for Lysander or just play that Hypnotoxic Laser. That works too. And check it out, we're going to drop the big Grenade Hammer. 150 damage. Hit my own guys for 30, that's fine. Garbodor and Charizard are going to take some hits, but Yveltal EX is going to hit the discard pile, and that means Seismitoad has taken the win. So you can see, even against a very powerful card like Yveltal EX that doesn't take much energy to attack, you can do some pretty big damage just with a simple attack like Quaking Punch. It is really, really good, and it's one of my least favorite cards to play against, and it's just super annoying. But hey, it is really good. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. I will certainly have some more for you soon. I am Pooka from the Top Cut, and I'll see you guys next time.